And hello, welcome to Radio Glenguilly here at the hospital, and we are apparently back on 87.7 FM. You're listening to Nick Kind, and this is my show until roughly 2 o'clock. We are, or I am, late starting. So yes. First, let's get the song request on, shall we? This is for Gosha now, friend of mine. We haven't actually seen each other, I think, in years. I think the last time me and Gosha even met was at the... not Castle, it's called the Cliff Hotel in Cardigan Bay, if anyone knows it. I believe we were celebrating a birthday party or an anniversary of some kind. I think that was the last time we met. We should, of course, all arrange to get together again, either for a dinner or just to get together, a party of some kind. So we'll have to do that. Anyway, Gosha requested Luther Vandross, Never Too Much. And that there is for Gosha. Now, our show today is going to be themed around storytelling tracks and, of course, artists that focus more on telling a story, whether it's emotional or just inspired by, well, I guess world events. So, to start the programme, I'm going to tell you about Gordon Lightfoot and the track The Wreck of Edmund, I think it's Fitzgerald, if I'm pronouncing that right. It took place in, I believe, America somewhere, some lake. But basically, the research I've got is a Canadian singer and songwriter, Gordon Lightfoot, was inspired by a news article that led him to basically write, compose, and perform, obviously, the wreck of the Fitzgerald, whatnot. As a way of commemorating, I can't get that word out either, the sinking of the ship. It was a bulk carrier that was sunk back on the 10th of November in 1975, according to my information here. I, of course, have not, apart from that, got much more knowledge on the ship, but I assume it was just a container ship that was going across the lake to get basically from one side to another. In a way, I would about to say like us going from Wales to Ireland or something like that, but yeah, you go, or to the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight's probably the better alternative idea. Anyway, yes, let's get this song on and you can see for yourself now. Now, I'm failing to pronounce that, and also just to address the volume, if you are listening and actually to the show, not on demand, etc., you may have found the volume was either a bit too quiet or peaked at a certain point. Now it's just because we were adjusting it here in the studio. Now let's move on, shall we? Led Zeppelin, even, with Stairway to Heaven is our next track, written by Robert Plant and Jimmy Page in 1971. Stairway to Heaven tells a story about a greedy woman who is unnaturally optimistic about her very promising future, is that way to put it. See what you think. As I said before in previous shows, you can always get in contact, and now that we're recording as well for Facebook, YouTube, etc., you can always leave a comment there too. One of my more favourite tracks by Coldplay, Viva la Vida, is actually based, has a deeper story to it. I never really listened to it thinking this way, but when I did the research, yes, there was a story to it. So Viva la Vida is a retelling of the French Revolution and the death of the King Louis XVI. That's the knowledge I've got here, by the way, not my knowledge. This song was written as an interpretation of the King's final speech prior to his death, presented from the King's point of view as he gives, obviously, his apologies to the people and accepts his eternal fate. So yes, back in, I think it was 2008, I had no clue. It was just a catchy song that I enjoyed. Coldplay with Viva la Vida, followed by Evancho with Lovers. Now that track originally is from a girl that was or made an appearance in the Americans Got Talent back in 2010. Now, she has, of course, recently gone on to, well, I say recently, over the years, gone on to release 8 albums. But that track in particular, Lovers, is actually apparently written around her easier life back when she was younger in her hometown, and is based around, I guess, her love life with somebody else, obviously back then, that she's reflecting and bouncing the song's lyrics around on, if that makes sense. I'm trying to describe it the best way I can. But yes, it is featured more on life events. Now, we will move to American Pie by Don McLean. Prior to the release of this song, the term American Pie apparently didn't even exist. It was Don McLean's who actually created and coined the term when he released the song in 1971. He claimed, "I saw the implication of America's going bye-bye. Since 1971, we were a horribly divided country with tremendous anger being directed at the government over the Vietnam War." And then, of course, yeah, goes on to say, well, I'm going on to say that my impressions that it never really revealed the true reasons behind all of the song. It's just, it's his opinion on when he made the song and, of course, writing it, etc. That kind of thing. But yes. Right. American Pie. American Pie. Now, that was the 8-minute version, as obviously if you've been listening to it you can tell clearly. I chose that one purely because for the first time when I was putting my show together, that was the first time I ever heard the extended version of that track, and I actually really loved it in the moment. And I just thought, no normal radio station's ever going to play it because it's longer than 3 minutes. Naturally, they just don't. They'll play the shorter version. So I thought, since this is hospital radio and we are a little bit more free to do as we please, I thought we would indulge. Okay, next on our list is Suzanne Vega with Luka. Now, here we go, the reading part of this. A rock song from the 1987 era tells the story of a boy named Luka that lives upstairs in an apartment building. At first he denies it, but then later reveals that the noises heard at night are those of child abuse. The song is from Vega's second album, Solitude Standing, apparently. So yes, apparently he's going to be probably my key word in this show. Alright, there we go. Luka. Now, I don't usually play tracks the following week. If I've played them 1 week prior, I'll normally skip them. However, I couldn't resist. With this week being focused on storytelling, I had to include The Devil Went Down to Georgia. For those that don't know, Charlie Daniels Band, that's the one that released it. An idea on the story. During a slow period of soul stealing, Satan challenges Johnny to a fiddle playing contest in order to gain control of his soul, in exchange for a golden fiddle. But Johnny ends up, well, beating the devil and winning said fiddle. It is from the Million Mile Reflections album. So yes, I personally enjoy it, and I'm sure there are many out there. And The Devil Went Down to Georgia. Whether it's the story or just I guess the song itself, the beat, it's catchy, but it's also a great sing-along. And yeah, I loved it. It also reminds me of the Ghost Rider movie with Nicolas Cage. It's not the most, it's not the greatest movie, and it's definitely not one of Nicolas Cage's best, but I personally enjoyed it. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? We're 1 minute, 40 seconds off the hour, so let's see what we've got lined up next. So we've had The Devil Went Down to Georgia, Take the Money and Run by Steve Miller Band. The 1976 rock song Take the Money and Run, you can see where this is going, can't you? It's a bank heist or bank robbery, but I'll tell you the story anyway. It tells the story of Billy Joe and Bobby Sue, Two outlaws trying to evade police after they have committed a robbery and a murder in El Paso, Texas. If I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure I am. Or I'm confident I am. I won't spoil the ending, basically. You'll just have to listen and, yeah, put it together yourself. As it's gone 1 o'clock here, I am Nick Kind. You're listening to Radio Glengwilly here at the hospital and again on 87.7 FM. If you follow me on Facebook, naturally, you'll see the videos later when I upload them. And, of course, on YouTube as well, under Nick's Hobbies and Interests. Hello. Right, let's get this going, shall we? This second half of the show. Big in the 80s, Michael Jackson. We have Thriller next. Most people know of the music video. It was a huge success, but it was also, if you're interested to know, at the time of making it, it cost $500,000 and it was one, if not the most expensive music video made in that time. 1983 is what I've got written in front of me, but that is the time the music video was made. To describe the story behind the song, for those that don't know Thriller, a mix of disco and funk that features a ghoulish spoken word section from Vincent Price, details a fateful evening when all the creatures of the night are awoken and ready to take on the humans. So yes, for those that don't know, well, if you don't know Michael Jackson's Thriller, have you been hiding under a rock? Because yes, it is quite a large track and one of, I would say, I'm not going to say the best Michael Jackson song, because that's personal opinion, but definitely one of the most iconic and well-known songs from Michael Jackson. And there we go. Right, let's move on. 18 and Life is what I've got next. It's by Skid Row, apparently. Now, I assume American because I have never heard of them, but when I was doing the research for this show, when I was putting the show together, I normally always do it like the day before, so my yesterday being Sunday. And yeah, 18 and Life. Basic storyline is in 1989, heavy metal ballad that tells the story of Ricky, a young boy whose anger and alcohol addiction leads him into a life of crime. He eventually shoots another person and is given a life sentence of only, I say only because I always think of life as 25 years, but only 18 years for his crimes. Last time I played this one was back on the show before we took the, I think was it about a 2-year break for COVID. It's Heart with All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You. The basic story appears to be like an older woman that picks up a young guy on the side of a road and basically a hitchhiker. They end up going to a hotel and obviously making love through just for one night. She leaves early and of course he wakes up to just find a note. Well, apparently when they were writing this, there is a deeper meaning that the woman intended to get pregnant through that one night purely because her lover couldn't give her a child, if that makes sense. I've hopefully explained that the best I can. This was originally released back in 1990 and the band's, or in the band's 10th album. Like I say, it's from Heart. Enjoy. All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You by Heart. Like I said earlier, I haven't played that since my old show. Now, let's move on, shall we? By Harry Chapin is our next track. It's Cats in the Cradle, a folk song released in 1974. It tells a, unfortunately for the hospital radio, it tells a depressing tale of a father who just didn't have time for his son whilst he was growing up, and then later in life when the father did have time for his son didn't have time for his father, kind of thing. He was obviously too busy or working, and it's the idea that the son has just basically become what his father was. So yes, but again, another storytelling track that I thought, when I was listening to it, I thought yes, this can fit today's theme. Cats in the Cradle. Now, I do apologise for this. It was difficult to actually get a version of the song. It's old and it hasn't been remastered either, so the quality might vary a little bit. So I do apologise. It is Last Kiss by Wayne and I don't know if I'm going to butcher this name. Cochran or something like that. I'll get to the idea of the story behind it. Back in 1961, the rock ballad Last Kiss tells the story of a man who takes his girlfriend out for a date in his father's car during a very heavy rainstorm, or I was about to say monsoon, but it does list it as a rainstorm. They come across a stalled car in the middle of the road and unfortunately couldn't avoid colliding straight into it. When the man awakes, he finds his girlfriend barely conscious. She gives him their last kiss before she passes away. From then on, he vowed to be good so that he can meet her, of course, in the next world. Ooh, that song creeped and got away from me. Crikey. Right, let's move on, shall we? I believe we do. It's John Cougar with Jack and Diane. In 1982, rock song Jack and Diane takes place in a rural American setting and tells the story of two high school romantic idols discussing their hopes and, of course, dreams for their future lives. This is, of course, from the fifth album titled American Fool. Jack and Diane. Crikey, I can hear the weather outside. It's absolutely pouring down by the sound of it. Anyway, let's move on. We've got Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. Now, again, like Thriller, I imagine a lot of people have heard this. There's been multiple covers of the same track as well, but I'll give it a rundown of what it's about. Basically, in 1988, the folk song or folk rock song Fast Car is about a poor woman living in poverty who has high hopes, optimistic hopes for their life, obviously, ahead. More importantly, when they are driving fast with someone in particular on this story, somebody they've just met. But as time goes on, their lives do not improve, and she realizes that she's actually just repeating the same lifestyle that her mother had before her. Like I said, there is multiple covers and there might be slightly different versions, but I have gone with Tracy Chapman with this one. Alright, we have roughly 20 minutes of the show. Let's keep moving, shall we? We have Valerie up next. I nearly spoke the name earlier. Valerie, of course, by Amy Winehouse and Mark Ronson, is it? Yes, it is Mark Ronson. It's an original song actually by an English indie band named the Zootons. Yeah, I'm being corrected on that. It is the Zootons. But became worldwide hit after Amy and, of course, Mark covered it in the 2007, or back in 2007. It apparently was written about the makeup artist Valerie Starr. Following Amy Winehouse, we have Escape. Now, this featured in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, obviously starring, you had the likes of Bradley Cooper, you had Vin Diesel as Groot, you had Star-Lord was played by, I can't think of his name, Chris something or other, Chris Pratt, I think it is. Very, very enjoyable movie, lovable characters, but the song itself, Escape, released back in 1979. It's a song about a man wanting to leave his wife, only to accidentally find out she might have been thinking about doing the same thing. So yes, I think plenty of people have heard it, and especially if you follow the Marvel Universe movies, you would have heard it in the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack. It had some great top hits, and I think a lot were focused around the 80s. We have A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash. That is our next track. A very quick sum up of the song. The song tells a story about a boy who was abandoned by his father after he gave him a girly name like Sue. It's a very sort of joyful song, and it wasn't the one I was expecting. I've got another song lined up later, and I've got a bit more details on that. But until we get there, A Boy Named Sue. And there we go. Now, let's skip ahead, because I thought I might as well play the song I was actually thinking about, and that is Lola by the Kinks. Now, here's the backstory behind Lola. Although released back in 1970, Lola is still one of the well-known rock songs that came from the Kinks. The song is about a guy who meets a girl named Lola in a club. She takes him home, and it turns out, of course, she's actually a man. Well, let's keep going. Apparently, the band was inspired by their band manager, who danced with someone he thought was a woman, but was, of course, too drunk to realise that it really wasn't. That is the song I'm thinking of, and was thinking of a moment ago. And Lola by the Kinks. Now, I started the show late, so I'm just going to roll off the last few songs, starting with Jolene. Jolene, of course, by Dolly Parton. It was written as a woman who is afraid to lose her lover to another woman, basically. And it's not just any woman, it's a beautiful woman with red hair and green eyes. And it sounds a little like this. Alright, we are now down to the final few songs. I think, if I had a brief look a minute ago, yeah, our last two. So let's get those out now, shall we? We are going to move on to David Bowie with Space Odyssey. Now, the other week I mentioned a song playing in the Metro game, the DLC. It was actually a reference to Space Odyssey with Major Tom. In the DLC, you're standing in a control room. There's a nearby submarine, etc. And there's some stuff going on anyway. Military background kind of stuff. Whilst you're standing there, if you overhear a conversation on the radio, you can hear them basically, I guess, interpreting their version of the Major Tom section in that song. So they're saying, Major Tom, come in, etc. and all that lot. Anyway, that's beside the point. I just wanted to address it because I mentioned it last week. It's an iconic song about a fictional astronaut, Major Tom, who ventures into space and, of course, loses connection with ground control. There we go, the David Bowie. That is, like I said about the earlier song, that is the remastered version, so hopefully it came through nice and clear. Finally, to wrap up the show, we are there round about, it's 2:10, so this is our final track. As I said, I started a bit later today, getting in and setting up, having a good old conversation behind the scenes. I was behind. I couldn't help myself but add some Ed Sheeran in just to wrap the show up. It is A-Team. Now, a backstory quickly is, it's an emotional ballad, yeah, sure, and that tells the story of a young drug addict. It's, through my homework, it's based on a girl Ed Sheeran met when he was volunteering at a homeless shelter. I couldn't tell you when, it's not actually dated, and of course I don't know exactly when Ed Sheeran really sort of either came away from doing volunteering but became big, because you imagine if he was volunteering at a homeless shelter, there'd be a lot of fans there nowadays. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be it from me, so goodbye if you're watching this on demand. If you're seeing it on YouTube on Nick's Hobbies and Interests, thank you for watching. Comment below. If you're listening, of course, yes, you can tune into my next show on Monday, 12 till 2. You're listening to Radio Glangwilly. I've been Nick Kind. Take care.